My name is Tony and welcome to my shop. We've got a little piece of elm up here today. It's about 14% humidity. Didn't dry very well. It's probably gonna end up pulling quite a bit out of here. I don't know how deep the cracks are, but I think we get through them and end up with a pretty bowl. So let's get to turning. Got a 5/8 inch bowl gouge with a 55-degree Irish grind on it right now, made by Crown. See where those cracks are coming in. Okay, one's already almost disappeared. So we're just gonna have to get past that bark. A flat grain down there, should be interesting. Grab it yourself, double ones. Then pull it down to the top end and see if it's more film or if we cut it out. It's coming off hot. Okay, we still have this little pith that was missed or a knot. Pretty big cut there. But we're round, so let's go ahead and pull it up with the grain. Yeah, this is a deep cut here, so that might be worth filling with something pretty. Might get out some my little turquoise dash. Still there. We have that one there that's tight, but it's still a crack. And then this gross one up here. Probably take one more cut here and then I'm gonna have to sharpen. This stuff is a lot harder on the tool than I was expecting. A little bounce. We're getting a little bounce off of the cracks. I have all my shape except for this lump right here. We might, wherever that crack is. You can hear, if you listen closely, you can hear the crack come around right there. So let's take a look at what we got. We got this big crack here, some little ones, big enough to fill. Get some interesting inclusions, some really pretty figure. Another big crack. So if we bring the top of that bowl down to here, we're still gonna have to deal with this big crack, and get past those. I think this is going to be our main one we're going to want to fill. We're going to come down and probably lop an inch off of this, maybe 3/4 of an inch. But let's go ahead and clean this out first, and then we'll go for a little fill. So all I have here is a Harbor Freight dental pick set, try to get all the loose fibers out of that. Peel it all the way back to where the crack is so we can get some of our filling all the way in that. See how some of these fibers can bust away, some of them just don't want to come right out. So if worse comes to worse, what I'll normally do is I'll get out a Dremel tool with a really fine little round ball bit on it, and I'll carve out those holes, but I want to leave them looking as real as possible. I don't want them to look like I added them. Like, who adds a crack to their bowl? But sometimes if you over carve, they do end up looking that way. Let's see if I can just pop that loose fiber out there. So it's down in the bottom. You can see the pressure you put on that definitely wants out. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a razor knife and cut those out from the bottom. Leave that bridging crack there. I think this is going to end up being the actual top rim of the bowl is going to have this artifact in it. The reason I really try to get these cracks cleaned all the way out is so that I don't end up with like a little piece of sawdust in the clear CA, because this is just going to be a CA and turquoise pour. We'll use some crushed turquoise, and we'll throw a little, I like that, okay. And then we'll throw some thin CA on it. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go and put a little bit of the wax around this edge here, like we talked about, to keep it from soaking into the grain. Okay. Try to move it in a little bit better, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing is just getting the wax on all the end grain here so it doesn't soak up that glue and discolor the wood too much. Still might have a little discoloration, but it takes care of quite a bit of it. All I'm using right here is a little mineral oil and beeswax, same stuff I use to finish my bowls, just an older blend that I've stopped using as frequently. Might put a little over here too. Put a little thin CA in a couple of these little cracks. That's more of a inclusion there, I think, coming out of that feather. We're going to lose this entirely. So we'll start up here. I always put the sharp tools away between uses, because I have reached my hand down looking for something else and been blessed to find my hand just hit a razor blade or something. Yeah, so what I do is I'm just going to start prime this hole in here with a little bit of thin CA, just a few drops in there, just to start something low in there. Then I'm going to hit these little we leaked it right down over our bowl, so that's going to have to be sanded off. You can see how it pools on top of the wax and rolls down off of it if you don't, if you're not super careful. I'm trying to just let it wick into the crack. Yeah, see, that is a crack, so it did wick it and it did accept the CA. This is, there's gonna be some nice chatoyancy in there. You can see it even without anything but off the tool. It's a little bit more thin CA, and then I'm gonna, you know what? This isn't gonna be an exhibition type piece, so I think I'm gonna use a little less expensive media. couple of pretty glitters here. People really do like the gold and the blue. Blue looks a little bit like turquoise. But I think for this one, I'm going to go ahead and go with gold. It has a pretty classy look, believe it or not. This is just literally pop glitter. Standard stuff you pick up at a Joann's or a Hobby Lobby or something like that. And all I do is I kind of liberally fill up the inclusion that I'm trying to fill. I don't do it all in one shot. So we get some in there, and I trickle in the thin CA and let that set up. And it's kind of a rinse and repeat until I'm standing above the actual height of the bowl surface itself, so I have something to kind of go after with the bowl gouge. So, all right. So it'll just be a lot of rinse and repeat on that, and I'll be right back. So after a couple of layers of the thin CA, I put a little thick in there and some accelerator, and then I'll fill the rest of the cavity. So now we're gonna have some like pretty clear crystal looking stuff in there, as well as our gold. So as we get further into the turn, we'll see more and more of like almost like a crevice that's filled with like, you know, pyrite or fool's gold or something like that once the thing's done. So that, remember I got wax here, so a lot of this sticking to the sides, the wax. So once I work that in, I'm gonna come over the top with a little dollop of medium Starbond now. I get the thin in there to kind of bond with all of the glitter. And then I use the medium to actually fill the hole and provide me with the top surface. So we'll wait for it to kind of settle. And watch it kind of soak into the crack. You really want that. If you see it soaking, that is going to give you the prettiest look when it's done. And again, this is a poor man's fix here. You got a bottle of Starbond, which you already have, and a $2.99 pack of glitter. Little Pop. Pop is the brand I normally use just because that's what our local Joann's carries. So a lot of this will flick right off when we get on there. You can see though, if you look at the right angle, hopefully I'm getting that on the camera, you can see how it's bubbled up over the surface now and hardened. And I still have a little tackiness there. And it's nice and hot though, so it's curing. So I'm gonna go ahead and give that a couple minutes to finish up. I don't think any of these other cracks, we're gonna cut all these away, so I'm not as concerned. This will all be gone. This will be a part of the rim, and we'll probably end up having to stop and fill the top of this once we get down as well before we turn the inside. We don't know how deep some of these other cracks are gonna go. So while that's drying, I'm gonna go ahead and true us up a nice tenon down here and get us ready to flip it around. Now for the tenon, I always use that small bowl gouge. And it's got a super sharp point on it, and this is really good for cutting in and getting that dovetail all in one pass. I don't expect us to have this wide a bottom on this bowl, but to start, before we go around to cleaning this up, I want to make sure that I've got a nice tight tenon space here. I'm going to go ahead and flatten that off a little bit to make it easier for me, but we already have a good grab right there. I just want to make sure we get a good flat bottom. Yeah, I think we can, let's see. One of the things I look for is when I press on the outside is anything move. You want to make sure nothing's moving on the inside, because that's going to be a splashy splash and ruin your face mask. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and scrape that. with shear scrape here to see if we can clear off that glitter, get an idea of what exactly, if we need to do any more filling before we flip it around. That gives you a good idea what that's going to look like. Got a little bit, couple spots I'd still like to fill with a little bit more, just to make sure that we got a nice filling before we flip it over. And sometimes you heard that clickety-click when the tool runs across it. Sometimes that will pick out a little spot, you'll get a little chip out or something like that, but that's how fast it takes to fix that. So it's still a pretty economical method for filling a crack on a piece that you still want to make presentable. And a lot of times even something as, you know, as frankly as easy and as simple as filling a crack with glitter can make a part sell faster off your table. I've always been surprised by how many people like my little glitter fills and stuff, and those pieces move faster than a piece without it. And sometimes I'll even get more, even though it was a piece of timber that, you know, I would have gotten far less for a much smaller piece if I hadn't taken the time to fill a crack like this. This one here, this little crack that we had on, it goes up that branch. I want to just get some in there, let that get all filled in. I'm seeing that opened up a little bit when we shear scraped, so I'm just kind of pushing a little of the thick, this is medium CA actually. Even though we're going to come down through that crack, we clean it up on the top. When we get around to it on the other side, we should have a much easier process hollowing it out. So I expect we're going to come down to about here on this bowl. It's going to be a little bit shallower, go a little bit higher. But we'd have to deal with this one here, a couple little cracks here. But let's go ahead and run the shear scrape over it one more time. Yeah, that looks nice. Smooth to the touch. There's nothing busting us up there. This is what I was concerned about here, so we're going to have to take another pass. Actually, before I flip this, I think I'm going to see if I can pull it in using the bowl gouge. I've got some big cracks here. I just don't want pieces flying off and hurt me. But I do want to see if we can get that top flat, just get a better idea what we're dealing with. come down at least past the rest of this pith. Once I get past this pith here, we'll go ahead and fill whatever's left, and I think that'll be a nice depth for this bowl. Be a good look. I'm going to pull the camera on the other side so you can see what I'm looking at on this rim, so you understand some of what I'm doing is just kind of understand what do I have to deal with on the rim, because we're going to want that filled before we take the bowl off, and actually before I finish it as well. So I'm seeing here, this is going to need cut out if we want to keep this much depth without going further down. And if we go too far down, we're going to end up with a very shallow, more of a dish. I think that we really need to keep that extra inch, but so we're gonna have a lot more filling to do, and so I'll take care of that off camera and come back when we're ready to get back to it. All right, we have all the cracks filled with our little glittering CA. So now I'm going to take a final pass here, see if we can get some of the color out here from the staining from the glue, and then we'll sand it and flip it around. I do have a fresh edge on the tool. Yep, that'll take the glue right out. Okay, all of our fills still tight and look good. Like the shape. I take one more pass just to round that off a little bit better. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that particular profile. I want to come a little rounder. Shame on me. Okay, that's a better shape. We've got some end grain stuff to deal with here, but we'll get that with the sanding. I think that's what it's time for. Time to get to sanding. Okay, we'll go from 80 to 400 and I'll bring you back when we're done sanding. Okay, we've got her sanded down to 400 here. Pull the sawdust out of the grain here. There's a little something right here I can see that could probably sand out a little better. This has the nice ripples when you run your hand over it. The hard grain, the growth rings are harder than the other wood. So you get this kind of, just this cool texture if you sand it right. And you can see how our fill turned out really pretty here. So let's go ahead and get a little of our shop-made grit on there. Okay, I've got my DIY shop-made grit here from Woodworking McDaniel style, sorry. I'll get that right someday, but the guy really's taught me a lot of stuff. Still never met him. I'd like to meet him someday. Hint, hint. So all I do is I kind of apply it with shop towel. Let it go. I'm running at about a 900 RPM right now. Once I get all of it off my shop towel, and I'll go ahead and even put a little bit down here at the very bottom, even though we'll probably clean that off later. I still like to see how it looks. Okay, flip it to a clean spot on the towel, crank up to max speed, and we're just kind of work it in now. It should give us a nice glossy finish. So I just go across the towel until no more finish comes off. Let the heat kind of work that wax into it. You can see my reflection in the bowl, so that always makes me feel like we're doing something right when it comes to polishing. All right, that looks pretty good. And then before we finish it, I'm going to get out some Lara Carnauba. Oh, look at that, and that looks pretty. You can really see the way the glitter and the epoxy or CA glue filling really gives that a nice pop. I see a couple spots here that you couldn't see before we finish, so I'm going to probably work those in by hand a little bit here. Probably going to need to grab another towel in a second, but just a dab on here. I'm going to come around these edges on the grain where it looks like there's a tool mark, but I can't see it or feel it. And I just kind of work the stuff in there. See, it kind of makes it just disappear. You just got to get up and down, going along with that long growth ring. Really makes a difference. I think that was the only spot I saw. There's a little something here. And when we're going really fast, and these are two different elevations, so the ring between the growth rings is where you still see sometimes you need a little extra sanding. So I use the grit to do that because it's very, very light marks, but enough that another woodworker is going to see. You know, most of the stuff I make isn't from my mom, so it's got to be good. Yeah, she's going to love it no matter what you do, right? Mom has to love your work. But when you get out there in a marketplace, most people won't see the little imperfections, but if you're at a show with other wood turners and stuff like that, they're always going to see. At least I know that's one of the things I'm looking at. You know, how was the finish? How smooth was it? Do I like the shape? Is it balanced? Not being judgy, but I mean, just how we are as artists and as wood turners. We're always looking at, you know, how can we up our game? So I'm gonna go a couple more passes here with clean towel. I don't know how the camera's picking up the shine coming onto this, but over here I can it's almost mirror-like finish on this side. But it's going to be a mirror-like finish without that glossy, plasticky feel, because it's just wood, polishing the wood to a high sheen, and then getting it with some beeswax and a little bit of 2B pumice. It's my final grit. So that's pretty good looking there. Let's look at that. This beautiful chatoyancy when you hit that end grain there. You know, so you get your pith would have been over here, so this is our end grain running down to that tree. That's just pretty. And we had a knot over on the other side. So this would be a crotch. We might even actually have a nice feather in there now that I'm looking at it. There might be a feather in this one. We'll see when we get in there further. It's been so long since I milled that one, I don't remember if it had any extra branches sticking out or something. Now I'm going to take my shine, So that one I call the grit, and this one I call the shine. And this is just beeswax, carnauba, and mineral oil. All right, it doesn't take a whole lot. I like to kind of rub it on first before I buff it off. Mostly because I just like the way it looks and I love the way it smells. I do put a few drops of lemon essential oil in it. Kind of the stuff you'd use to make candles or stuff like that. I just like the way it smells. It adds a nice smell. I don't know if it does anything to the shine or makes anything prettier. This loose end grain up here really needs a little extra something there. So I like to rub it in. I'll let it sit for a few minutes and then we'll buff it off. I'll be right back. Okay, I've got a nice clean microfiber cloth here. I'm going to still be running it at about 1200 RPM. I'm just going to kind of work that wax off and buff it in. Still with some slow circular motions. Work my way up to the top. Keep that wax in there. As I get closer to the top, I kind of stop the movement a little bit, and it seems to not have any swirls or effects there. Okay, when we kill that, that should be a pretty lovely final finish before we flip it over. There you go. We've got our fill, get that lovely chatoyancy we were talking about earlier. Beautiful grain, just all sorts of interesting things happening there. And we filled all the way to the top. But before we flip this around, when we take it off, there's probably going to be some stuff around this rim we're going to have to fill as well. And we'll see once I get it off the lathe, and I'll bring you back if there's more filling on the rim. Use the heavier HTC 125 jaws. These are very similar to the Vic Mark 4 5-inch jaws as well. I think the 125 stands for 125 millimeters. And I've had really good luck with these. When I was in need of jaws, there was no one who had any Vic Marks in stock. And so I bought this from Hurricane because I've had such good luck with everything that I've gotten from them. I know that they're not a manufacturer in the traditional sense of the word, but they really do a great job sourcing, and quality control has been great. I mean, I get my crown gouges mostly from them, and I've been very pleased with this. The only limitation on the HTC 125 is the jaw selections. There's just not a ton of them. So I think I have a 50 millimeter set of jaws for this, then I have some spigot jaws for them, and then a set of 4-inch jaws. I have a one-way stronghold when I couldn't get a big enough set of jaws for this to do bigger bowls where I could do a 5 or 6-inch tenon. When I'm coring on something that's 18 inches, this little tenon, I just snap them off all the time. So I had to move up to that. And I've been very pleased with it as well. I just hate having I have 4 different manufacturers of jaws from all the years I've been turning, and none of the the chucks, and none of the jaws are compatible. So you're always kind of stuck in an awkward spot there. So again, I'm going to put the tailstock up, even though we probably don't need it, just as I clean off this rim. You notice we didn't really have anything to show you here on cleaning this part up. So as we get into it, we might find something and we might have to pull it off, but I'll leave it in the chuck now until we're ready to flip it around and finish it, even if I have to take it off to flip it up to fill anything on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and reposition the camera so you can see the hollowing, and we'll be back. Okay, this should be a pretty decent angle for you. I'm going to do pretty traditional hollowing here. There's nothing fancy. We get in here, we might make a nice wide rim and do an inlay perhaps. Just want to see what we got. Never know with all the cracking we dealt with on the outside if that's going to be a fundamental problem on the inside. So I'm going to start out at about 700 RPM and mask, face shield on. Let's do it. trying not to be too aggressive. I don't want to end up grabbing a crack or something. We're getting really nice shavings off this. It's pretty wet towards the middle compared to how it felt on the outside. So there's definitely still some wet wood. We're going to see some movement in this once it gets off the lathe. So just to be clear, this is Siberian elm. It's a real common, they almost call it a trash tree up here in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of these come down. They grow like a weed, very fast, and usually pretty easy to get an arborist to be willing to drop one off for you. You can see we do have that big crack running through here. We do have some of that epoxy and gold dust came all the way out, or CA glue, I'm sorry. And we also have that feather right here. Look at that, isn't that pretty? Hopefully that'll show up all the way down into the tree, but this is very wet here and we're seeing a lot of cracks. So I'm gonna probably end up leaving this about 3/4 of an inch thick as we get down to that point. Won't do any real serious finish turning until we see what we have to fill. If we've got a bunch of stuff to fill, that extra meat will really help us out. So let's go ahead and finish and start taking some of this middle out. Good. That's just my little Benjamin's Best pointy tool. So I took a regular old, I think this is considered a 3/8 inch bowl gouge, and I put a very sharp 40-degree all the way around on it, no blunt up here. So I can really ride in, I can cut with just that tip like it's the world's smallest bowl gouge, or I can dig in there and take out big chunks like you were seeing. Not a detail tool, not a finish tool, but bulk removal, getting a tenon set, it's perfect for that. Get around here, you can see our cracks opening up quite a bit. The ones that we sealed on the outside do come all the way into the bowl. You see that we're filled on the top really nicely, but that crack here is going to probably have to be addressed as we move some more material. Little crack up here. Didn't get enough of the CA in it. You might be able to turn some of that away. This one filled all the way in. So just have to see what we get as we get down there. Here's an oldie but a goodie. This is another Benjamin's Best, one of my oldest tools that I was able to reprofile with a new sharpening jig. And see if we can get a little, it's not quite a steep a bevel with the crown. That's a little measure. We're starting to get the sound of thin, even though we're not even close to thin. So that means some of these cracks, which we did get rid of some, but we saw this monster over here. So I'm going to come in, and again, this is not a finish cut that I'm going to do. I'm going to come in here with the point tool, just get this wall a little flatter, and we're going to flip this around and fill that up. But boy, everything else, just some beautiful, interesting grain there. Looks like a lot of that feather is going to stick into the wall on this side. We're not going to see it in the bottom of the bowl. And that's really a failure of milling on my part. Okay, so you can see, here's the crack we're going to have to fill. So I'm going to go ahead now and take out this center. I'll round the bottom out a bit. We'll fill that crack and then we'll finish off the bowl. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove my tailstock center because it is sharp. And as you hear me say, I do not like the little elbow poke. I remember Kurt here during a demo called it a vaccinator, because you will remember, and generally everyone only smacks your elbow into their pointy little tailstock center one time. Just shows you how bright I am. I've probably done it 20 times before. I said every time I don't have it in, and I'm not using it, it's got to be up on its stand. Right. I think that we can take a couple of passes here with this traditional bowl gouge. We don't need to get scrapers out and stuff at this point. We're just doing some bulk removal. So let's make it easy on ourselves. I'm going to go ahead and leave that little nugget in the bottom, so there's nothing down there we need to address off the lathe. This is what we're going to have to address. So what I'm going to do is bring my little portable between the bedways table over here. And if you haven't built one of these yet, it's the simplest, cheapest thing in the world. Just measure your bed width and tack a board down. Keeps glue and everything off and gives you a nice flat, stable surface to work on. That's just been, I think every shop needs one of those if you're working on a lathe and you still want to be doing color treatments and stuff here and you don't want to be staining up your lathe bed. I think I've mentioned it before, how much I love my Oliver. I mean, I really do love this lathe. But a couple of things that you get when you have a 60-year-old technology or a 60-year-old design. It's a 2018 model, but you don't have a live center. I mean, excuse me, a spindle lock. So the spindle lock that was on this was like threaded, and it hung on a little chain here, and every now and then it would get caught on something, and I had a couple bowls get dented. Just silly stuff like that would drive me nuts. So I just removed it, stuck it in the drawer, and I just use a metal rod that fits in the hole that won't hurt the screws in there. So that's our thing to fill right there. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if you can see that because I can't see the camera, but so what I'm going to do now is clean this out like we did on the other side, get my glitter in there and my CA, and spend a little time filling it up, and I'll just dress up a little bit of these on top. I'm thinking that we're going to start with a wide rim and then go down, maybe slightly enclosed, and then all the way down to the bottom. I think that'd be a very pretty bowl and practical for as a big candy dish and nut bowl, even a side, on the table. But ooh, that wood is wet down in the middle there. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. All right, so let me get that set up, and might be interesting. I'll pull you back in. Yeah, I'm still doing things kind of old school, mostly because I'm so new to making videos and trying to talk to people while I'm turning that I have one camera, and it's an iPhone. It's the same iPhone that I use every day for work. And then on top of the iPhone, I have a tripod. I used to do like serious video work back in the early 2000s. You know, had big cameras back before everyone ended up with a Red or a Blackmagic or one of these super expensive cameras. So I kept a lot of stuff around, just thinking, oh, someday I might want it. And so I have like a really nice Manfrotto tripod and stuff. But I'm not used to not having remotes, multiple cameras, a monitor showing me what's happening on the camera. But I've noticed a lot of guys do it with less and make some beautiful videos. So I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way. I have to keep walking around the lathe. I'll go over there, you know, adjust the shot, make sure the focus is where I want it. And then I'll come back around to this side and start doing the work. So when you go into editing, it's kind of funny. Any of you have had any time editing at all? You get in there and you're like, why is there 30 seconds of dead air right there? I've got to wait through and cut out the spot where I was walking around the shop trying to set my camera up. The other thing, as someone mentioned, is that I might want to consider getting myself another microphone. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is the sound quality good enough? Can you hear what I'm saying? And then the other question I have, if you could leave something in the comments about it, well, I really want the feedback, is I've done a couple of videos that are kind of the ASMR style, really quiet, calm. I'm not talking. I've done some with just tool noises, kind of dialed back. And I've done others that I've added some music to with tool noises kind of in the background, just so you could kind of watch the process rather than me walk you through it. What do you prefer? What is your preferred method for watching these kind of things, consuming this kind of content, I guess is the right word. I do this because I love it. It's obviously never going to make a living doing this. This is just something I really enjoy doing and thought it'd be a fun way to add something to my hobby. But the other part is I also don't want to create content that no one's interested in. If I'm just making home movies for my grandkids somewhere down the line, then maybe I should treat them a little differently. But if I really like to make content that someone's interested in watching, that's going to give them some tips or ideas, or just enjoy the process of watching someone else create, hearing what's going on in their head. I know that I consume a ton of different content. Most of it is instructional. And I think you guys all already know that I'm a Tomislav Tomic fanboy. I mean, I just love the way the guy teaches. His tool control is just amazing. And he tells everybody who he learned everything from. You know, Richard Raffin was his main mentor, and he really got a lot from watching Richard's stuff. And I've been consuming Richard Raffin content back from VHS days. I mean, he's one of the first people I ever learned to turn from. In terms of not in person, obviously. I've never been blessed enough to be around that. And then there's always those cool symposiums and stuff, and all the craft supplies videos with Kirk DeHeer and Dale Nish's son that are really, really informative, really kind of walk you through the whole process of something. But I also like to just sit and watch someone just do their thing. You know, like, hey, this is how they do it. They're not explaining it, not justifying anything. They're just like, hey, you know, I'm going to make a vase today. Watch me. I'm going to make a bowl. Yeah, I'm going to go machine or mill a log, you know. And sometimes that content I find relaxing, and I always pick up something from it as well, just watching how other people do things. Just making sure that we don't have any loose glue under there, because that one fill here, this is a pretty deep fill. But I got 4 layers of CA in there, 1 layer of thin in the crack with the glitter, and then 4 applications of medium. So I'm probably a 1/16 of an inch protruding here. So we'll take that very slowly with a very sharp gouge. I just kind of topped off some of these little cracks on top, make sure that we're going to have a completely flat rim. And this one over here still feels a little wonky. No, I think we're okay. I think we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and get that back up on the lathe here in a couple of minutes after it's fully dry. I get one more little zap of the accelerator. I don't know if extra accelerator does anything. I've never really looked at the chemistry of that. But somehow I always feel like if 1 squirt's good, 2 squirts has got to be better, and 3 squirts, well, that's better than 2 squirts. So guess I got to keep the people in Starbond to get kids to put through college and stuff, I'm sure. So, okay. So, get her back on there. And let me reset the camera angle, blow all the glitter off of my lathe, and same process on the inside as we did on the outside. We'll use our shop-made grit. I'm going to apply it while the bowl is spinning this time with a little bit of speed. Get in all those grains, then we'll stop and go back through it afterwards. Oh, and we want to do that in forward. You can feel the grit on it. Okay, I'm going to speed it up. We almost got it all off. Then I just kind of keep working it over the edge till I see a nice shine and cloth comes up clean. I think we're ready to go ahead and put on the actual shine, which is the carnauba mineral oil and beeswax blend with a couple of drops of lemon oil. And I'm going to rub this into all the soft wood between the growth rings there, because this is almost like turning two different densities of wood at one time. That wood between the growth rings is softer, it sands different, takes polish different, so you really got to kind of work it into those rings. Makes a beautiful finish. You see our feather there from our, that's all we were able to save from that, but it does give some nice chatoyancy, some pretty figure there on the side. A little, no, that's a growth in the tree. I thought we had a bug hole. Okay, one more little pass here with a very saturated oilcloth. I will still take this to the buffing wheel after we pull off the tenon, but I want to do my best here while we're at the lathe. Give a little spin, a light on it for you. There we go. Got it filled. All we have to do is buff that off, and we should be pretty happy with what we got from a punky old broken blank. Anybody would be happy to have that on their table. Very nice. All right, let's flip it around and get the tenon off. So what I normally do when I'm taking my tenons off is I slightly concave the bottom of the bowl. So it'll always sit nice and flat. A little wee straight edge. Still have a little bump in the middle, so I'm going to take that out. It's kind of obvious from certain angles, not obvious from where I was at. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that in, and then we're going to put a little texture on the bottom. And there we go. Nice flat bottom. After sanding, it'll be even flatter. A lot of people who follow me or have seen any quantity of my work know that I like to texture the bottom of my bowls before I sign them. Before I do that, I like to finish them up nice and flat. See what we have here. Once we get a lot of that's just dust. Okay. So I'm going to hit that with 120, 180, 240, then we'll texture. So I've got the Abranet 120, 180, 240. And I'm just going to turn the speed down about right around 500. It's kind of a little light sanding because we are going to texture it, so it's not like we're not going to put a mirror glossy finish on this. Just going to swirl it around a little bit. I'm not even stopping to look at the marks. I'm just looking for a nice flat surface because the texture is going to cover any kind of sanding lines we have. And then we'll do a 320 over the texture before we put the finish on it. Let's spray the dust off there. Okay, now for my texturing, I use Ron Brown's Best texture tool. Really enjoy it. It's got 2 spiral geared wheels on it. And so get those nice and spun up, nice and clean. So I run the speed right around 600. You come in at a slight angle, a little high. Let the wheels start to spin, and I'm going to draw it out to where I want my texture. I'm going to stay in the groove so I don't overlap it. That's about all there is to it. Just the right amount of pressure, you get a beautiful spiral pattern like that. And then to make it stand out, take a point tool, give yourself a line. Oh, actually, I should have looked at that a little tighter. This grain is something else. I'm going to give myself a line on the outside and a line on the inside. Take a look at that. Very unique. Comes right out of the middle like that. Get some nice pattern on the bottom. Hit the top of that with 320, then I'll carve away that middle part, sand the bottom, sign it, wax it, take it to the buffing station, and we have a finished bowl. This is Abernet 320. And this doesn't really take the detail out, it just softens it, all the edges where the tool ripped out the wood for the texture. Blow off. All right, that's good looking. Got a cloth here. I'm not going to use our standard shop stuff. I'm going to use some Howard's. It penetrates really well. It gets in all those little nooks and crannies without me having to try to carve out any of the grit that sometimes gets stuck in the texture. You can see as that is applied on just how pretty that is. Just gonna roll it on there, let the rest soak into my towel. I'll let that sit for a minute or two, and then I'll buff it off and finish up. Well, there she is. One elm bowl. She finished measuring up just under 8 inches, a little taller than 3.5. Some beautiful chatoyancy. I think she ended up with a pretty nice shape. Again, this was a broken blank. This is something that would have ended up in the fire pit if we didn't take the time to make a little bit thicker, chunkier bowl with some filled in cracks. You can still see that beautiful grain and that feather we were able to save there along the wall. So all in all, that's a very pretty, candy dish, nut bowl, small side serving dish. I think anybody who'd receive that as a gift would be pretty happy. Well, thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. This is Tony.